Welcome to Book Talk with Uplifting Impact, where we are chatting it up about my new release, Actions Speak Louder. Our guest host is no stranger to diversity, equity, and inclusion stories, no stranger to uplifting impact, one of our most amazing partners, and is really ready to get into this conversation with us. So welcome, Jon.
Thank you, Deanna, and thanks for inviting me along on the Book Talk series. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Jon Kaupla. I'm president and executive director of the Wisconsin School of Business Center for Professional and Executive Development, and I'm excited to be here with you today, diving deeper into your new book, Actions Speak Louder.
Can you believe it's here, Jon? I feel like we have been talking about this book together for such a long time.
Oh my goodness, Deanna, we have it's so exciting. I think about friends and I treasure our friendship and just how much we've been able to work together over the years. And I know we both have children. It's kind of like birthing a new child, isn't it?
It is, except the process is much longer than 9 months. So it is.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's actually more challenging than birthing a child.
Some people, as a doula, I'm not sure, but yes, there is
Yeah.
so many, aspects, and there's so many people who really have to be part of the process. I think that's one of the
Yes.
most beautiful things about the book writing process, but I think it's the one that's kind of like the most secretive, right? Like people don't realize
Yes.
just how many people, and when I think about like one of the biggest categories is people who are your cheerleaders, people who like support
Mm.
you, Jon, and you have been in that category for me. So this is my big public thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It's really been an honor and a pleasure, and I know this is only the beginning of even more impact as we go forward. So, Deanna, I really wanted to do this. When I got the invitation, I was really excited because I've personally seen the impact with the clients we serve at the center as they worked with us, but also with you and Justin implementing these DEI solutions at their organizations. I know you can't mention the company, but I know this will sound familiar. One of the clients that we've worked with, a large 30,000 employee organization, they've not only talked about DEI, but they've actually made meaningful changes and embraced DEI awareness and improvement throughout the organization. And that's exciting to me because I think one of the things that I've heard a lot lately is that there's a lot of companies that were really quick to talk about DEI improvements following the murder of George Floyd, but and it just like the pandemic, it's been 2 years,
Right.
2 years since that murder, and unfortunately, a lot of organizations haven't made the internal changes and held up to those commitments that they talked about early on. So I still feel a lot of work to be done, and that's why I'm so excited about Actions Speak Louder because it really I've had an opportunity to preview Deanna's work, and it gives you the chance to look introspectively, which is the I know you always talk about this, Deanna. It's so important that you first look internally at yourself, but then it gives a tremendous blueprint for organizations. And I see such a great need still for this book. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's interesting because one of the things, the big steps in the process is determining what the name of the book is going to be.
Mm,
Actions Speak
mm,
Louder, like, as soon as I like heard it, we were like workshopping it and everything. I'm like, no, this is definitely the title. But one of the titles that made it pretty far in the process was around like collecting receipts, right? It was that
oh,
same kind of idea of,
mm,
wow, there's a lot of interest and excitement and of making promises. And now what's happening,
mm,
right? Like where are the
mm,
receipts from
mm,
the things that we said we
mm.
were buying into,
That's
that
good.
we were supporting? But it's not as good
Yeah.
as Actions Speak Louder, right, Jon? We're still on the right.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah. 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 I mean, I like both titles, but yeah, I like Actions Speak Louder because I think it does summarize where we are
Right.
and quite frankly will continue to be. As the saying goes, talk is cheap, right? I mean, we can talk a lot about it, and I think that's if I can just share a quick story
Of
about
course.
just my own personal journey with DEI. it's been 5 years that I've been here at the center, and I joined in 2017 as an executive leader. And you may recall, Deanna, this was the first time in my career that I was at this level as an executive leader. I was always in support roles in corporate jobs, and now I had the opportunity, and I realized that I was awarded a significant level of privilege, and that privilege provided opportunities to influence and foster change. And that started, first looked, of course, at our own culture as an organization, and just how we need to change again and take some actions to change as an organization. But then I looked at all of the organizations that we work with and that we have the opportunity to touch and model and lead, and that it felt like an immense weight, honestly, and a responsibility, but it also felt like a tremendous opportunity. And I'm aware now more than ever of how intentional, especially the most senior leaders, need to be at organizations. And it really does start at the top. I mean, there can be grassroots efforts, and in many organizations I've been in, I've seen those grassroots efforts from the underrepresented populations in those organizations. But at the end of the day, it takes a leader, and oftentimes that leader has to acknowledge the privilege they have, and then use that as the opportunity to really be change agents. And it's been incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful for partnerships because we can't do it alone. This does need to be a community effort, and these types of partnerships help us and help leaders like me just really move in a meaningful way what we hope to do in our communities.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a huge thing, and I really appreciate you bringing it forward because I think so often, we hear the word privilege and like our first response, especially because of what you see in the media and kind of the way that it's portrayed, like your first response is like, wait, I don't have it. But one of the things we talk a lot about, right, and in the book too, this idea of you have if you recognize that everybody has some privileges in different situations, it's different, right? We get microphones often, John, because of the work that we do, and so we're able to have platforms like this. But there's just
Exactly.
different privileges that you get in different
Hmm.
spaces. That the sooner you're able to not only recognize them but own them, and then think about, well, how do I better use them for others? How do I use my privilege? The further
Yeah.
we're all going to get, right? So I think that whole lesson just around using your privilege is something that, again, I can totally like relate to you because when I realized, right, like, yeah, I'm being put in these leadership
Mm,
positions, which affords me something different than what might have been, right, or in my own past, what
exactly.
other people might do. And so now what am I going to do with it? What does that look like? How am I showing up differently to kind of model some of the things that we're talking about? So it is a heavyweight, though. That is also true.
It is. And I think I'm probably at this stage of my life and career that I think about legacy.
Mhm.
What do you want your legacy to be, both with your family and your children, but also in this role? And again, I of course want to be known for the great work that we do as a center, but more importantly, I would like to be known that we really made significant change happen, and we're change agents. And again, we can't do that alone, but we can collectively make a significant difference.
Yeah,
I believe.
I agree. I agree. And I think, people might not know what our partnership is. We've talked about it a lot, but maybe we should just say what it is that we do.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Well, again, I shared that we have a friendship. So Deanna and I actually work together at an organization. So we kind of started together more on the corporate side, which, I think now that I think forward, that was a pretty cool thing. And neither of us knew what was in front of us and in front of our careers. But then we had the opportunity to connect through the University of Wisconsin-Madison, our dean at the time now was able to reconnect us,
Yeah.
and we started dreaming, and we started thinking about what could be possible through this partnership. And excited that we were able to launch a certificate. I believe really best in class as far as just all of the principal and foundational concepts as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's been very well received. We have already some graduates of the program, which is exciting, and it's something that it was a commitment, and it was a significant commitment, but it will become, I believe, something that will be a part of our curriculum and our programming for many, many, many years. Hopefully, way beyond the two of us, even Deanna. Again, talk about legacy.
Yeah.
Uh, how cool would that be to say that the two of our organizations were able to get this started for our communities, and we've dreamt about how we can expand that and take that forward. And I mentioned that very large organization. It was because of that certificate. Now we're starting to get requests from companies that want to bring that internally and do a more of a tailored or custom, for their needs. And that particular organization is going to be training all 30,000 of their employees in some of, not all of the content of the certificate because it's quite robust, but some of the core concepts. And if we can get that kind of, impact and start really seeing that snowball
Yeah.
and it we can start in our own communities, but hopefully grow across the United States and across the globe. I believe that.
Oh, yeah, and we've already had people in that certificate program who are coming to us from different places in the world,
Exactly.
just, from our
Exactly.
state, and so that has been really awesome, and then being able to come and also partner alongside, with organizations who are trying to move their, like, big ideas into strategy. That is,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
like, one of our both of us share that as just a core passion, and I think
Yeah,
that's what the whole
we
book is
do.
about, right?
We do.
Like,
It is. I know. Again, back to the title,
do it.
uplifting impact. Yep.
Let's
Yep.
do it. Let's
And again, the impact can be great. I really believe that. So,
awesome.
Deanna, I wanted to share a personal story about inequity that I've experienced in my career journey. As I mentioned, I have spent most of my career in human resources and in corporate, and human resources historically has been primarily a female driven or dominated profession. And so I've worked with amazing women over the last 2 decades, many who desire to progress in their careers. And I've seen many, many women passed over for promotional opportunities and the jobs given to internal male candidates and even external male and female candidates. And because of this, these amazing women who I believe could have been tremendous leaders in those organizations became quickly disengaged. Their performance was impacted,
Mhm.
and oftentimes they ended up leaving the organization. Um, it was incredibly frustrating. I was a mentor and friend to many of them, and to listen to the pain and frustration, especially when they loved the organizations they were at.
Yeah.
They didn't want to leave. They didn't want to be disengaged. They didn't want to feel the way they did about the leadership. And I don't believe the organizations ever realized truly what the impact, negative impact that they had on these women's careers. And it was hard to watch. It was hard to experience. Um, and I wanted to share that because I know that you address this very topic in uplifting impact. So maybe you can talk about ways that maybe we can fix this, or ways that we can address this in organizations.
I think right now, one of the big things is everybody is talking to us. Literally every single day, I'm having a conversation with a client about the great resignation, right? People
Yes.
moving on. And it's dominating our news headlines. This is not something that's like just happening in one sector and not in other sectors. It really is happening at a very high level. And it's a real thing, and it's having tremendous impacts on the organizations. But I think one of the things, like, to your point, even about what you're talking about, is that a lot of what is going on and a lot of the decisions that people are making, there is this assumption that people are jumping ship because they can get more
Mm,
money or they can get, a different title. And yes, of course, that always happens. I mean, that is part and parcel of right being part of the working force. But one of the key drivers, and this is what the research says, is we kind of talk about it in the book too, is that a lot of times people are leaving because they don't understand like what their promotional opportunities are, or they're leaving because
exactly.
they're not getting professional development. They're leaving because they're not getting mentorship. And when you think about literally like just the financial cost of what it takes to replace people and to bring them in, just think about it, right? Like we don't have to put numbers here. I mean, there are numbers. I think
There are.
if I remember
There
the
are.
research correctly, it's like 6 to 9 months worth of somebody's salary is what it essentially takes to replace
Yeah.
them.
We used to say 2 to 3 times their salary, which,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I mean,
intense,
when you think of all of the recruiting costs and the time to productivity,
right?
I mean, people don't come into an organization and are immediately productive, right? It takes time
Yeah,
to train and help them understand your culture and your values and what drives the performance of that organization. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a huge
Incredibly expensive.
so expensive financially, but it's also really expensive on morale. It's expensive on people's desire to want to feel included. It's expensive on your goodwill out in the community because,
Yes.
John, the same conversations those people were having with you and those women, they were having them with their other friends, right? They were having them with
And family.
circles and their family. And so right there, you're impacting your potential customer base, you're
Yeah.
impacting future employees, you're impacting your
Exactly.
goodwill in the city. I will share this example. Just I got a phone call last week. I probably get 2 to 3 of these a month. But I got a phone call last week and it was from somebody who's an executive that anybody who's looking for someone to join their team would do a backflip for, right? Really like amazing leader. And the reason for the phone call was I have a short list of organizations I'm considering. It was an
Mm,
African American woman, and she said, I am too far along in my career to be playing a lot of the games that I played earlier in my career.
mm,
Do you have any
mm.
information about any of these organizations that I have shortlisted that would cause me, or that you think would cause me pause about entering?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because at
Yep.
this point in the
Yep.
game, she's being recruited for literally anybody would, like I said, do a backflip to have this amazing woman on their team. But she is not making her decisions based off of what people are. She's making her decisions based off of what is the goodwill that's out there in the community. What does it feel like? I mean, her question was, do you have any other women of color who are working in these organizations? Because I want to hear directly from somebody who's had this experience, either past, present, and I want to be able to talk about it. I'm going to say, right? You know this, right? Coming from a background in HR, you know this as somebody who's running a big organization. That is not the kind of conversation you want to go south, right? That is the kind of
Nope.
conversation you want to be lifted up. Like, yeah, absolutely. Oh, you're
Yeah.
considering them? They're fantastic. And here's why. And here are the examples. And here's who you can talk to. And I just don't think
Exactly.
that people understand the opportunity cost of, there is a huge opportunity cost by creating and perpetuating exclusionary behaviors.
Yep. Well, and then you look at sites like Glassdoor,
Yes.
which I mean, if I was a candidate looking for an opportunity, I would look at, and that in fact that actually talks about the CEOs, the
Right.
senior leaderships, and are they a man or woman of their word, and are they do their actions, speak
Right.
louder than their words, and so yeah, I so agree with you, and I think that's contributing greatly to the Great Resignation. I think that's spot on, Deanna.
Yeah, and I just think like, right, when you even look at something like Glassdoor, I have to tell you, like, I honestly, when I'm thinking about different organizations we might partner with, as a client, not even thinking about it as an
Mm,
employee, but as a client, I want to see like what do the people inside your organization really think about whether or not
mm,
you're living up to these values. And I have walked away
exactly.
from, I mean, things that would have been, you know,
Yep.
really amazing opportunities for some of these, vendors and different things with places we would have partnered with because it doesn't look like what they're saying and what they're sharing with us is actually being felt within their organization, and vice
Yeah,
versa, right? I've made decisions
exactly.
positively too. It's not a negative thing always. It's like, wow, look at what
No,
your people have to
no.
say. Like this, you
Yeah,
really are
yeah,
walking the walk. Like this is something I can be a part of. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about this until just now, but even as a consumer, they have that saying that says, how you treat your employees is how you treat your customers. I mean if you treat your employees right, then that is how you also look at your customers. And
absolutely.
if you're not treating your employees right and then expect them to deliver on a, promise that you're not delivering to them. So, there's probably a lot more data to be mined in places like Glassdoor, for all of us, even as consumers,
Oh,
and especially related to inclusion and equity.
yeah.
So,
And I think, one of the things I hear, John, is people will say, well, how accurate is that? It's based off of people's perceptions. When you come to a conversation around
mm,
inclusion, perception is really important, right? It's not
yeah,
the only thing, but it is really important in ways that it might not necessarily be in some other more, quantifiable things. And
yeah,
so, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's so much information that can be mined from how people are talking or how people are reporting on sites like that, or, just how people view what you are doing and what you're sharing into the world. That's huge.
yeah, yeah. Perception is reality. I mean, I've always lived by that. I
Yeah,
mean, and I still agree. So. I know, Deanna, one of we're kind of on this topic, but maybe you want to share a couple comments. I know one of the challenges that we see in organizations is eliminating unconscious bias. That's something that we get many requests for, and I know that we've partnered, on some of those
sure.
opportunities as well. So, would you share a little bit about how actions speak louder discusses this important topic?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we try to really own when we talk about unconscious bias is the fact that even setting yourself up to think that you're going to eliminate it doesn't necessarily work, right? Because it's
Right.
unconscious. So it's really like that's kind of setting yourself up for failing.
Mm,
However, there are some things that you can do to make sure that you're much more cognizant. And so what we try to focus on is like, people are always like, give us the list. Just give me the list of all the things.
They always want a checklist,
Yeah,
right?
right, and then I won't do any of those things, like, I will,
Yeah,
and it doesn't exist
yeah.
because different things happen in different situations, call for different things, and so really what we try to help people understand is what is the process by which
Mm,
you are thinking about things that you are experiencing, and I think one
mm,
of the big ones that we talk about in the book is this focus on what does it mean to be professional?
mm.
And what's really like we do these exercises and there's exercises in the book. So when you get your copy, you'll be able to see these exercises. But we do these exercises and we try and have people define what it means to be a professional. And if you
Mm,
have 100
mm,
people in the room, you are going to get 100 different definitions, right? 100 different things of what fits into the category of
totally.
non-negotiable versus what, and what that looks like. And even things that we might like assume are universal, right? The ways that we even define those things that might be in our universal category are very different one person to the next.
Mm,
Right.
mm,
And so one of the things that we talk about is that we can't therefore list all the things like these are the things. And then if you do these, you will have no more bias. What we can do is we can say, what do you define as professionalism? What does the rest of
mm,
the team define as professionalism? How
mm,
much of that is actually based in what is going to help you like move forward? And how much of that is based in that's just what you're comfortable with or that's what you're most, what you're most used to. And then how do we, if we're thinking through this process and we're thinking critically, it's about critical thinking. If we're thinking critically, then what is it that we could do that would change our behavior or change our policies
mm,
or change whatever to be more reflective of a much more expansive view of what it means to be
mm,
professional?
mm.
And I think that to
That's
me,
good.
like, for me, it's much more and I try really, really hard. There's always some resistance. There's always some people I have to pull, kicking and screaming, but I try really, really, really hard to move away from, like, that checklist and much more
Mm,
towards, let's start practicing the process of how we're gonna go about looking at some of these things so we don't get stuck, right? And we don't keep perpetuating the very things we say that we're trying to get rid of.
it's really helpful. I think about I used to always talk with people about the golden rule. The golden rule is like, treat others how you want to be treated.
Right.
And I used to always challenge that because how do we know, or why do we assume other people want to be treated the way that we want to be treated?
Right.
I don't know if you've heard of the platinum rule, but
I
it's more on, have you? Yeah, so treat others the way they, and it just reminds me of what you're saying, is a more expansive perspective of even the professionalism. Because there's so many aspects, right? I'm sure as you lead those discussions, because you hear dress, I'm sure, so appearance, how somebody talks, the language they use, or, I mean, there's so many facets
so many
of
things.
how you would define professionalism.
I'll give you an
The,
example that came up really recently that's
please.
kind of funny. Not, I mean, not funny, but so the other day I opened my closet up and I was looking at my closet, and I come from a really rich, like, Indian tradition. And so
Color and,
right, the brighter the color, the better. Right?
yeah.
I grew up just in a household where you wore an all yellow suit and an all red suit and all,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
also just in my African American background too, like, no big thing to have a big, beautiful,
My mom would call that loud. It was
yeah,
loud.
loud, like, yeah. But for me, that was always a representation of joy and excitement. And I remember
Yes.
being in corporate America and someone telling me to tone it
Mm,
down, right? And I never fully
mm,
toned it down, but I definitely moved away from having all of the bright colors and instead, having a pop of color. So I went from being
mm.
loud to having a pop.
A scarf.
Yeah, a scarf, a pin, just a pop of color. And I just was looking in my closet the other day. I was just reflecting, right? And
Mm.
you can't find anything like dark or drab. This is probably the darkest thing I have because
Yeah, yeah.
everything is like bright and right. And that to me is a
Mm.
representation of one of those moments where if I'm wearing a yellow jacket, right, and somebody's wearing a gray jacket next, does that make me any less professional than that person? Does that make me any
No.
less, well
Right.
suited to be able to do the work? And in many, instances, and the reason why I thought about it is because I just come from an event where everybody was wearing like dark, black.
Gray and black and yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many people said,
Oh,
"Oh my goodness, seeing you just made me so happy." Like, "Oh, wow, this." So, in that, I mean, that's a perfect example of how me being able to be who I am,
yes.
bring my culture
Yes.
into the workplace, actually bring a
Yeah.
lot of joy to other people. Like, somebody even said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sick of looking at just, dark."
What a breath of fresh air,
Yeah,
huh?
what a breath of fresh
Yeah.
air was the exact quote, John. And so again, it's those things, right, that we get stuck in. I never would have wore these earrings, but these earrings came from Ghana. They came from, right, there's this beautiful
They're
story.
beautiful,
I'm
yeah.
sitting with a client and having a conversation. They're going to get some attention, right? I can start a
Yes.
whole conversation about Ghana and about how and who created them and the social enterprise
Yep.
behind it and all of that. But if I'm not in an environment that accepts that or has a definition of professionalism that doesn't encapsulate that, then all of a sudden I'm putting myself right in an inability, and I'm discounting my ability to create those kinds of relationships.
What's really interesting about where we are now with coming out of the pandemic and now having more discussions like this. I happen to be in my office, but oftentimes, and I know many times we've talked, each been in our homes. And now with this whole hybrid and remote, it's been interesting because I don't know if you've experienced this, but we see more of who people are
Yeah,
because we're in their home, and we've seen the true personality and who they are. And I think there's now more of an acceptance,
yeah,
and perhaps I think we still have work to do, certainly, and I think there's opportunities, and we could talk longer on inclusion with this no remote, because if I have part people in the office and part remotely, are people that are in the office being treated differently or have more opportunities, than folks remote work. But I think the positive movement in inclusion is that we were all a bit on a level playing field. Whether I was the CEO or some of the front line, we were all at home, and I was able to see who you are as a person. And I think that's really what you're saying. I mean, it's like we need to look more broadly than, and not think of it as professionalism as a uniform.
Yeah.
That everybody has to look the same. And I know we have both worked in organizations where the women were expected to wear suits and the men were. I mean, and yes, it's like you didn't need to be told
No.
because you saw it.
Yeah. Well, in my
And if you didn't fit that, you probably wouldn't have stayed, right? I mean, you would have been told either change or you don't fit here.
right. And I think that that's
So,
what's so interesting about that too, John, and I could talk at length about this, but I also think that part of the reality is that for some people, there was no difference between home and work.
yes.
And for other people, there were these grave
Mm,
differences between home.
chasm.
Yeah, huge chasms. And I think one of the things I've heard other people say that too, right? That my realization of like, oh my gosh, you were doing all of this and coming to work and I had no idea, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
either didn't have that experience or they hadn't thought about it and stuff. And so I do think that there's like a moment for disruption and it's happening. I mean, we don't have to,
It is happening.
it is
It's happening.
happening. And I think
It is.
the biggest difference isn't so much that there's this like new expectation. It's just that the expectation is being extended to everybody, right? If I'm part of a majority group in an organization and I could just show up the same way I showed up at work and I could show up the same way at home and that's cool. And that's how it's always been for me. But now I'm seeing like, wait a minute, I just saw you and you act the same way at home that you do at work, but I've never had the privilege of being able to do that. So I think I should too. That's what's happening here. It's not that
Exactly.
it's changing that. It's just the fact that it's more expansive. The number of people who have that expectation and quite frankly should.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Well, Deanna, I think we could do a full day one of these, but I know we have some important work to do, right? And I've so enjoyed our time together. And I wanted to share. I've pre-ordered my copy of
yeah.
Actions Speak Louder. I would just tell everybody that's listening, if you haven't pre-ordered your copy yet, please find the link in our show notes to get yours pre-ordered today. I I want to, and I mean this very sincerely. You don't want to miss this book. It's great. And Deanna, it's been a pleasure. I know you have some book perks that you want listeners to learn more about as well. Will you share those with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at Uplifting Impact, we're all about giving generously. That's one of our big values and things that we are always thinking about. So, right now, if you purchase a book, you get access to our foundations course for free. So, in this pre sale process, if you're interested, you can get access to that course. It's like 5 different videos. You can watch them whenever you want to. And it's really about how to deepen awareness and awareness opportunities in your organizations. So, it's an amazing add on, right? It would cost something extra if we were doing outside of this pre-release process, but really excited to be able to offer that. The other thing that we're doing is for people who are part of the launch is we are offering access to our Ask Me Anything sessions. So if you purchase 5 or more books, you receive even more perks. So 5 or more and you get even more perks. Once you order the books, you can just go to the webpage and you can actually, our website, upliftingimpact.com, and that's where you can go to redeem your perks. The other thing that we're doing right now, and there's only a couple weeks to be able to participate,
Yeah.
is our launch team. So if you want to just, have the inside scoop, maybe see a little bit of the content before everybody else does, hear about some of the fun things and surprises we have coming along, you can join our Facebook group. And the Facebook group is where the launch team is really coming together to help get more information out into the world. And if you've never been part of a launch team, it's a pretty cool experience. So I would just say, the team and everybody who's in there facilitating it is doing a fantastic job. So we'd love to have you.
They are.
Yeah.
They are, Deanna. I've been a part of it. I'm a part of the group, and it's been your point around some just really helpful tips and information. I've shared them. I've used them. I've told the team about them. So yeah, definitely want to encourage it. It all sounds really helpful. Again, the link to redeem your perks and join the launch team will be in the show notes. You can pre-order your book today too, and order one for a friend while you're at it. It's always a great gift. Gifts are good anytime, right, Deanna?
All
Not
the
just
time.
during the holidays. Surprise people. I I've thought it would be just, I used to do internal kind of book clubs at the organizations I was with. So, to get one for the management team or your leadership team at your organization, and then just kind of take a chapter at a time, and, each week or month, talk about that and how you're going to apply that. I always think that's a great idea. So, anyway, Deanna, it's been great talking all things Actions Speak Louder with you today. I can't wait to get the book in my hand later this month. The 31st, right, is when they
Yeah.
should ship. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, we
Right in
are
the corner.
weeks away. And again, thanks for having the book talk with us today. Before you go, if you're listening from social, please comment and use the hashtag the DEI Guide. And be sure to stay connected on social to stay up to date on the latest regarding Actions Speak Louder, its release, and the events surrounding it. So, Deanna, great spending time with you.